Hello, welcome to Challenging Leadership. My name is Steve Amatha, and I'm also with
Jared Scott.
Hi, Jared. Are you well?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Yeah, very good. We're recording this around Christmas time, so we're both sort of winding down a bit, I think.
Absolutely.
I felt like I should do a little bit of chat before the podcast starts because everybody else seems to do that, and we don't do that. We just get straight into the business.
Like we got to cover these topics, and yeah.
It is true. Yeah, we'll have to work on that, I think. Okay, but let's get to business.
Yeah. You're being too nice. No,
maybe.
That's the problem we're going to talk about today.
Right. Tell us about that then.
Yeah. So the problem of being too nice as a leader. I think that it's important that we establish the fact that we're not talking about that you should be some troll or ogre or even a bully, but also swinging the pendulum to the other side, seeing how, being that nice manager that everybody likes isn't necessarily the best thing as a leader, not just for yourself, but also for the people you lead, and then ultimately for the company that you represent. So what I was thinking about is maybe breaking down maybe the pros and the cons, and then we can banter forth a little bit back and forth. I'm interested to hear your perspectives on things. So
yeah, let's do that. Have you got a definition for nice first?
A definition for nice. I'd say I'm the definition of nice.
I can't disagree with that.
No, but I say that in jest. But to start with, I think that is something that I have to make sure that I find balance with, because I tend to lean towards being the nice guy. Wanting to be liked by everybody. But when you're talking about being a leader, it's so important that you've established boundaries, because here's what a nice leader sounds like. A nice leader is they're going to put up with things that other people wouldn't put up with. Maybe there's a disruptive employee and he can't help, he's okay, make excuses for it, or a deadline isn't reached. It's like, oh, you know what, we'll just keep moving that deadline because I don't want anybody to feel any pressure. And so it's almost that's where the niceness gets into. You're not really being an effective leader because you're not driving your employees towards the goals they need to achieve. You're instead just allowing people to reign free, as it were. And what happens in that case, I think sometimes, is maybe the high performers are just going to do their work anyway. It's that Pareto principle. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but it's the fact that you kind of let everybody do their thing, and then what happens is you have a flip where the high performers all of a sudden go, hey, you're not holding the low performers accountable, you're too nice, and now they become disgruntled, and now you got a whole mess on your hands. So it kind of just cascades into, you started out with something that you felt was a good thing, and it can be, but it turns into something that is disastrous for that. So
yeah, I mean, that old saying, you can't please all the people all of the time, sort of reminds me of that. So yeah, if you've got you're overlooking someone else's or one of your team members' underperformance or bad behavior, it feels like you're being nice, but actually from the perspective of the workforce, the rest of the team, they can become incredibly frustrated by that, can't they? I've seen that myself.
Yeah.
Why should I work my socks off? Why should I keep doing this? And this guy over here, he's just lazy, does nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. My uncle, just a quick story, but he was in the insurance industry in New York several decades ago. He's since retired, but he told me a story about, there was this guy that he had in his department who wasn't performing, and he felt bad for him because the guy had a wife and 3 kids, and he just kept making excuses for him. And the short of it is that he ended up having to let him go. And he ran into him a year later, and he's like, how's things going? He's like, oh man, I'm doing great. He says, I left my wife and kids. I've got a whole new life. And as sad as that is, in the same sense, it made him realize, wow, I cared more about his family than he did. So that nice
Yeah.
syndrome set in, where he was actually destroying his department by allowing that underperformer to exist.
Mm.
And he was worried about the things this guy wasn't even worried about. So
Interesting.
at some point, our niceness has to also be there has to be a constraint there that make sure we always are still looking at the big picture, whatever that may be.
Okay. Yeah. So you said about looking at the pros and cons.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
else have you got?
Okay, so let's look at the. I want to be negative first.
Okay.
So one of the
Let's do
things
that.
is a perceived weakness. So sometimes when you're that nice leader, everybody's like, "Oh," he says he doesn't really stand up for himself or the department, or other managers can view him as easy pickings when they're
Mm.
doing hot potato with a big project. Like, "Oh, give it
Yeah.
to the nice guy,"
Mm.
nobody and they know that they will do that. They'll say, "Oh yeah, I'll take that project because I'm the nice guy." And the thing is just because you are eager at taking something doesn't mean that it's the best solution. So that's one. Exploitation is kind of falling into that. Decision making, being afraid to hold people accountable. And when you're a nice leader, you can suffer from analysis paralysis, not from looking at the best way to do something, but thinking about, oh, I don't want to dump this on my team because that's going to overwhelm them. And at the end of the day, I think that ultimately you can lose respect of those that you lead and your fellow leaders when you are too nice. So those were
Mm.
some of the cons, and
Yeah.
interested to hear your take on that.
Yeah. And I guess, sometimes we're just worried about the response we're going to get. And that might only be an initial response. It might be that
Yeah,
people come round to the idea and you have
yeah.
some work to do to convince and demonstrate the benefits or whatever. We've talked about change already in this series, but yeah, sometimes people's first reflex is, and what that reflex is going to be, so this makes you feel
Hmm.
hesitant. So in my courses, I would describe that as passive behaviour, essentially from the leader.
Hmm.
So the leader isn't willing to stand up for what they know to be right. They Their wants are not taken account of. Their needs are not really met. It's the kind of doormat experience. So
Hmm.
yeah, in my courses, I really try to encourage um, my learners to not use passive behaviour. Um, and sometimes it's called submissive behavior. It's slightly different, of course, but just constantly allowing ourselves to be the ones that have to pick up all the pieces, have to do all
Hmm.
the extra bits. It's always us that get the wrong end of everything. Yeah, so lots of reasons, and as you say, you lose respect from your team, but you also find it really, really tiring. It's hard, and there
Yeah,
is an element of burnout. I think if you're bearing everything.
that's right. Like if you're the only one rowing the boat,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
absolutely.
yeah. Here, you don't have to row as hard. Let me row for you. And I'm like, that's not even the definition of a team either. So you ultimately become
Yeah,
a one man show. That's the exact opposite of another type of one man show, being a dictator. But they're still going to result in you being exhausted and losing your team.
absolutely. I'm gonna talk about something a bit later if we get a chance
Sure.
that relates to the benefits of having a good relationship with team members, and I'm sure you definitely would agree with that. But if you're complete walkover, the irony is that nobody thanks you for that.
Yeah,
So you don't get many plaudits. People just expect that you
yeah,
will be that person.
that's right.
And don't worry about him. He'll just go along with whatever
Hmm.
everybody else says. So yeah, and you don't really get many thanks for it, and nobody actually appreciates that. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's quite a destructive trait to be like that. I would describe. Yeah.
Hmm. It is, but there are some pros. I think seasoned with a little bit of salt or some good
Mm.
spices. I think that you can boost morale if you use it where it's needed strategically. Um, I think people will trust you or maybe be loyal to you if they know that you're genuine. I think that's the thing. If you're like you're a genuine person, then and it comes across as that could be helpful. It can help you to resolve conflicts, and you can develop employees to their strengths if you can have some patience. But again, each one of those is a slippery slope because you can just start. You teach others how to treat you, and by being too nice, all of a sudden now they're like, hey, I can just ask for anything, and they're just gonna yes it up, and then that doesn't work out good for anybody. So
Yeah. So I think it's worth just trying to put a framework against this.
sure.
Clearly, there's a balance to be drawn, and we talk about that quite a lot. We have done already on this podcast. There's a need. I think we also in the article that you asked me to read, which I'll put a
Hmm.
link on the show notes.
Yeah.
It was in the Harvard Business Review, wasn't it? And I think in
Mhm.
that article it also um, talks about something that I've completely forgotten.
Well, while you're looking for it, I can maybe this will bring it out. I think that the guy's name was Michael Fertik. He's the one that wrote
Yeah.
this article. It's actually like 9 years old, but it still has some very relevant information. It got into our personal mindset where we all like to be liked, and
Mm.
there are some people that don't like to be liked, and good for them. But I think in general,
Most people.
some of us like, hey, you want to be liked, and when you yield to that instinct, then that's where you start going down that path of becoming Mr. Nice Guy, and that's where things can happen. For instance, someone you're trying to hire, and you make a bad hiring decision because they're just such a nice person and they really checked all the
Mm.
boxes, and then the performance doesn't match that, and you just allow it to continue on, and that can definitely create problems.
Yeah, I've remembered now my point.
There we go.
Um,
See, I did my
yeah,
job.
it's
I'm good.
my brain's getting old and huddled.
Uh,
Yeah, the other point that I wanted to make was that we don't want to confuse niceness or friendliness with politeness. I suppose these are slightly
mhm,
different things. So I think I'm always keen to talk about being clear about what you need and want from your team and indeed from other people, including your manager. So you're clear, you ask for what you want or you need, you're clear about that, but you do so politely. So you're not bawling orders at people. You do it nicely, politely. Um, but sometimes what you're asking for is not necessarily what the person wants you to be asking for. So,
mhm,
but that wouldn't stop you asking for that thing. If you're giving somebody direction, I need you to get this report completed for me by 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Thank you very much. You might know that they really hate doing that report and that they don't want to do it. They've also got other things on, but it really needs to be done. So the question there is, are you going to request or ask that be done? So and do
mhm,
it in an assertive way. So I need that report by 3 o'clock, or I need
mhm,
you to complete that report by 3 o'clock. Thank you very much. I need you to. I'd like you to. These are very assertive types of statements, but
mhm.
you're doing it politely.
Sure.
Of course, you wouldn't be saying, get that bleep bleep
Yeah,
report done by lunchtime tomorrow. That's not the right way to do it. But
yeah,
regardless of what they want to be doing, that report needs to be done. So you're going to
yeah,
give them that direction. So for
yep,
me, that's the difference. It's about being nice. It's about being polite. But what we're talking about here actually is
mhm,
being a walkover or being a pushover and
yeah,
actually not getting the things done that need to be done, or
mhm,
not facing up to issues that you actually need to resolve.
yeah,
Um, and that's, I think, really nicely covered with this whole question of, are you assertive as a manager? Not aggressive, but are you
yeah,
assertive or are you passive? And if you're passive, that's when this too nice label, I think, comes out.
mhm, yeah, yeah. And almost, I liken being a leader almost to being like a parent, And this is in no way saying that, people you lead are little kids running around, causing a mess, but sometimes they can be like that. Well, you think about what would you define as a good parent? A parent that they're loving, and yet they give direction when needed. They can be stern, but not a bully, not abusive. But children, you look at the difference between children that are thriving in that environment, other ones where the parents just let them do whatever they want. It's just chaos. You can see them in the supermarket this time of year everywhere during the holidays, where you're like, oh, it's brutal, and the same can happen. Like if you address a problem immediately, but you do so in a way that's showing respect to the individual, other people are like, wow, so he noticed it, he did something about it, now I respect him. Whereas if you just let it go on, the respect meter goes down for how they view you, and so, instead of focusing on the I want to be liked by everybody nice guy syndrome, it's more about, earning and deserving that respect, because respect will carry you so much further than being liked.
Yeah, and I think for me this is related to goal setting as well, and
Mhm.
clear vision of what you need from the team. So, um, and a lot of this is set up beforehand. So this is another thing that I try to get across, is that often we can think about individual instances where we've maybe not quite got it right, or our team member or members have reacted badly, or in a way we didn't expect. And sometimes we can just think about that as a
Mhm.
single scenario, but actually a lot of the groundwork needs to be done before that. And that
Mhm.
relates to being clear about what the goals are. And then
Mhm.
everything else kind of relates to that. So if we have clear goals, big goals, if you like, vision goals, but also smaller goals that enable us to get to the ultimate vision or goal, then we can constantly refer back to that. In order for us to keep our customers happy, in order for us to keep that um, that special thing we've got, that unique selling position, in order for us to keep that going, we have to do this. This is the reason I'm asking you to do this by tomorrow afternoon. So there's an understanding that you don't always have to say that, but they know that, because that's a clear goal. We have to get this report done by tomorrow afternoon, because that's how we then make decisions about what to do next with the customer or whatever. I'm just making stuff up, but you get my
Yeah,
drift.
yeah, I
Um,
definitely do.
so I think that's that underpinning stuff. It's, you're very clear about what the goals are. You're very clear about what is required. And then they start to understand and trust that what you're asking people to do is directly related to those achievement of those goals.
Mhm.
And I think that gives you an extra a bit of credibility then. So it's not just, oh, Jared wants this, it's
Yeah,
we
yeah,
need this.
that's right.
And I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, that was so well said. And I've actually questioned myself sometimes. I was like, do they know the why? Because if you can explain the why,
Yeah.
then it takes away the like you said. It's not about what I said. It's about looking at, there's a reason behind this.
Yeah.
Now, one of my I don't. It's not like a sneaky trick or whatever. But I found I actually like to give assignments to people that's not their strong suit, not something catastrophic, where this is
Yeah,
like
of course.
the success of everything is hinging on this, but trying to get people to make incremental growth. And so,
Mm.
if you revert back to that nice, it's like, oh, I know the first thing they're going to, you said something earlier about initial reactions. It's like, I don't think any of us like to be asked to do something we're not good at, or we're like, oh no, but you have to push past that, and then you have to follow up with supporting them as they're doing something they're not used to doing. And if you can give them that support as their manager or leader, then they'll say, oh, so they're actually showing me how to do this, and I'm going to learn a new skill set, or I'm going to be better at something. This isn't just like, hey, I want you to learn how to do pivot tables in Excel. Good luck with that, and
Yeah.
yeah, that'd be my worst nightmare, by the way, is if someone asks
I used
me,
to train pivot tables.
oh,
Yeah, they are
oh,
awful. Yeah.
crazy wizard you are with that
Yeah,
dark
yeah.
magic over there in the Excel world. I try to stay as far away as possible.
I tell you, I probably wouldn't be able to do it now, because Excel's changed a lot since I was training it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, and thankfully I never have to use them nowadays.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so there's a bit of research that I thought about when you asked or said about doing this
Nice.
topic. So is that okay if
Yeah,
I just bring
let's
some of
do
this
it.
in?
Let's hear some different points.
Okay. So it got me thinking about something called LMX. So there's this thing called leader member exchange, which is like a theoretical um, structure that organizational psychologists sometimes think about, and there's been a lot of research on it. So it's called leader member exchange, but in a kind of sexy way, it's called LMX. So LMX is the idea is that I suppose it's a bit of a kick against some of the old fashioned leadership models that tend to think about leadership behavior as a kind of average behavior that where they sort of treat everybody the same, so there's a lot of kind of sort of leadership style sheets out, questionnaires and things like that. What sort of leader are you? Are you an autocratic leader? Are you a laissez-faire type leader? Are you, and so on? And there's loads of these that
Mm-hmm.
put you into a sort of box. But this is saying actually real leadership isn't like that. If you've got a team with more than one person, it's likely that you have different relationships with each one of those people, and those dyads, so they're called dyads, which is obviously these dual relationships, you and somebody else, you as the
Mm-hmm.
leader and the follower. It uses that phraseology. So we've got a leader and a follower, and actually what matters is the quality of that relationship. It's that particular dyad, and that relationship will determine how much it's described as the lens through which the worker or the member sees what they're doing and how they're doing it. And so there is quite a strong element here that having a good relationship with your manager really does make a difference. Really does help. So I think obviously I've agreed with everything that you've said so far
Mm-hmm.
around the importance of not being too
I'm not doing
nice.
a good enough job, then I got to say something so you'll disagree.
Yeah, I know. Um, but the evidence is that there are also it is also important to build a good working relationship with your team members. Okay, so I'm going to quote from this piece of work by Dulebohn et al. Again, I'll put the link in the show notes, but their conclusion, I'm going to read directly from it, is one of the most interesting findings of this study was that leader behaviors and perceptions explain the most variance in LMX. So that I thought this was really interesting. One of the big debates has been about fellowship, and actually, is it as much about fellowship as it is about leadership?
Mm-hmm.
But the research really strongly suggests that most of it is about how the leader behaves, which I think
Mm-hmm.
is really interesting. So,
It is.
we can't blame them. It's really down to us as
Mm-hmm.
leaders.
Yeah.
I carry on reading. Our meta-analysis results indicated that the average magnitude of the correlations of leader expectations of followers' success, contingent reward behavior, and transformational leadership with LMX was 0.61. So basically, what this is saying is that transformational leadership, which we've spoken about, the high expectations or believing that the team members have the skills and ability to do the job, and contingent reward behavior. So this is giving people good feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Actually makes most of the difference. These things are done through questionnaires and then they're all factor analysis. So that seems to be really, really important. The quality of LMX relationships appears to be influenced by leaders' use of contingent reward behavior, transformational leadership, and their expectations of followers' success. And these results indicate that LMX relationships contain both transactional and transformational leadership,
Mm-hmm.
providing empirical support for the contention that LMX relationships are both transactional and transformational. Again, I think that's very interesting because we've talked about this before. So the transactional bit is the reward bit, is
Yeah.
the equity bit. So, I expect to be treated properly. I expect to be rewarded financially to the extent that I'm putting the effort in. That's a transaction. But
Mhm.
also there's this, I'm really, my expectations, I understand that the expectations of my manager are high and that they believe I can achieve that. Those sorts of transformational qualities are also really important as well. So it's
Mhm.
that relationship, both transactional and transformational, that really makes a difference. So I think it's important for our listeners not to think that, actually it doesn't matter if you're not that nice to your team. You just got to be clear about the objectives and drive performance. Actually, this stuff really does make a difference, and people
Mhm.
will behave differently if they feel that they've got a good working relationship with us.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. It's important. It's important. I was thinking that we focus so much on who we're leading, and then at the same sense, being a nice leader can also get us in trouble when it comes to our level of other leaders, and also even
Mm,
those above us. And the that article in Harvard Business Review, he used a term, turning to polite deception, and that really stood out to me because I was like, I've never really heard that term before. But he gave this, for instance, scenario. Imagine you're in this boardroom and one of the owners comes in and they say, this is what we're going to do, and everybody's thinking in their head, this is the most dumb, stupid, this is never going to work. But everybody's face is like, yeah, yeah, good job, we're going to do this, this is awesome. And nobody speaks up. And that's
mm,
that polite deception where we also have to make sure that we're put in positions too to recognize things, patterns, ideas that, oh, maybe that's not where we want to go. And because nobody knows it all, right? Now, we can't change how the higher up thinks, and maybe they're like a dictator and like, we don't, nobody's opinion matters but mine. But in the same sense, it's also a disfavor to everyone, including ourselves, if we don't speak up when we say, maybe that's not a good idea, and here's why. But
yeah,
we
yeah.
result to that nice scenario where we offer that, as it says here, that polite deception. So,
Yeah, so I've got a couple of points on that. So when I read
yeah,
that part, I did slightly disagree with. So first of all, the premise, he said it was a brainstorming session.
yeah,
So
yeah.
in a brainstorming session, actually any idea should be put on the table, and we should not be shooting down any idea, whether it comes from the boss or from the most junior member. So I would say that whoever wrote that has got slightly the wrong idea of what a brainstorming session is. Now, once we do the analysis
Yep,
afterwards and
yep,
decide
yep.
which of these ideas we're going to go with, then yes, of course, that's when we need to be brave enough, woman enough, man enough to say, uh, actually, in my view, that's not going to work, and here's why.
Mhm.
But during that brainstorming session, actually, we want to welcome any ideas, no matter how crazy. So that's just a sort of technical thing that I slightly disagreed with. But in the
Yeah.
principle of it, yeah, absolutely, we shouldn't be just nodding sagely and just waving through completely daft ideas or
Mhm.
ideas that we think sound okay, but we know from our experience are not going to work or have a lower chance of working. Let's say.
Mhm. Yep, yep. But I'm sure we've all heard ridiculous things spewed out, and you're like, "Oof." But yeah, good point with the brainstorming session. But I've been
Uh,
parts of those where it's like, even then, there's like, "No, we're not even going to discuss that." And I'm like, "Ooh, don't
that's
don't
the,
squelch the creativity."
again. This is why I think I'm a big fan of setting things up. So at the beginning of that brainstorming session,
Yeah,
the clear rules need to be clearly delineated, which is right. This is a brainstorming session. This is not about arguing and debating the merits of ideas. This is purely an idea harvesting exercise. We're going
yeah,
to do the choosing bit afterwards. The quality control comes afterwards. This is simply harvesting. So if you see a big combine harvester in the field, they're not checking the quality of that wheat as they're going through it. They are literally harvesting every single bit, and then the
yeah.
quality will be checked afterwards. So that's just a small thing, but again, that's about being clear about what this meeting is for
Mhm.
and what your expectations are. But yeah, clearly we need to be able to challenge whoever it is. And I'm a big fan of using I statements. So I actually think that's a problem, or I don't think that's going to work. Or my view, okay, it's not the word I, but it's still a personal pronoun. My view is that that's going to create us some problems. And here's why. Here's the evidence why I believe that to be the case. Of course, remembering that we may not be right. So, we are still open to logical, reasonable argument that says, Stephen, but have you thought about this? And here's the counter argument. Fine. So I'm also going to challenge you a bit on the old parent thing. So I wanted to come back to that.
All right, let's do it.
So maybe this is for another day, but a really good model that I use in my courses is called transactional analysis. I don't know if you've come across that. So transactional analysis, TA, is something that a psychologist called Eric Berne, I think, came up with sort of in the 20th century, but it's still used a lot. And he talks about when we're having a transaction with somebody, which is essentially just a conversation. So we are transacting now. So I say something, you say something, and often it's about trying to get something or get information maybe, or even giving somebody some direction. This is a transaction. And during that process, we are coming from one of three ego states. And those three ego states are either parent, adult, or child. And it's quite funny, actually, if you get into these three. Maybe I won't say too much about it, but
another podcast we could really get into this, right?
We really need to do it, I think. So let's leave it there. But I would say the advice I generally give is that whenever you want to get something done and you want to maintain a good working relationship with somebody in the workplace, then adult to adult interactions are generally the best. You may get parent-child interactions at times, but generally they don't deliver what you're looking for. So again, I totally get what you were talking about, but just thinking about adult to adult, that's what I always try to encourage, because actually you don't want your teams to be looking at you as a parent. You want them to actually be conversing and transacting from.
You run into the being a micromanager problem.
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Managing the toddlers.
And actually, I think it is relevant to this podcast, because this episode, because you end up then again being the nice parent, or you may end up being the nice parent. And that's the parent-child relationship is a very different one to the relationship in the workplace.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good one too. We need to dig into that a bit more.
No, I definitely would like to do that. That sounds very interesting. So let me ask you this: we've covered all this stuff, and I was reading some information, and I said, "Am I a nice leader? Am I too nice?" And then I said, "Well, shoot, what am I supposed to do about that?" And maybe if you're listening to our podcast, you're going, "Well, you've called me out. Thanks for that." What can we do to get away from that and transition into somebody who's an effective leader who balances that nice with also giving people the direction they need?
Yeah.
And it made me think, well, bet you there's some good books out there. And the one book that I found, it was written by Lois P. Frankel, and it's called "Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office: Unconscious Mistakes Women Make That Sabotage Their Careers." And it also came with the premise this can be something that's beneficial regardless of our gender. So it has a lot of impactful statements in it, and I thought I might highlight just a few, and maybe we could get into that. But the number one thing that she talked about was we teach people how to treat us. And so if you are wanting to get over from that super nice area, you have to set incremental boundaries in place. You can't just go one day, what happened? Why are they all of a sudden, they'll call us an a-hole,
Yeah.
And, but talking about, how do you go from that to that? And it says the first thing is to start setting those boundaries, like just keep scooting it, just a little bit further and a little bit further till you get to where you need. And that can be different for each
Mm.
individual in your realm of leadership. So
Yeah, it's good.
just one of the things that she mentioned there.
Yeah.
Um, and then the other one that struck me was your silence will not protect you. And so don't be afraid to speak up or share your opinions or participate in discussions, making sure they know that perhaps you don't agree. I mean, that kind of, we just mentioned that a little
Mm.
bit. Challenging the notion that staying quiet ensures safety or avoids conflict.
Mm.
Whereas
Yeah.
being silent is actually going to probably build resentment and you're going to be disgruntled and you're not, and nobody's a mind reader, right? So then we're expecting the people we're leading to read our mind. So
Yeah.
couple of things that stood out to me when it came to that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. In a way, we train each other in the way we behave. And in fact, this comes back to actually Eric Burns' stuff about TA.
Hmm.
His original book was called "The Games People Play,"
Yeah.
and he talks about games that we play. So these games are like the same conversations we have with people over and over again. I need that report by Wednesday. Oh, but I've got so much to do. I can't
Yeah.
get that done. What else can I? Okay, well maybe we can move. And you have this same conversation every single week. It's a
Yeah.
game. It's a
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
There's other games, and sometimes the person just wants a bit of reassurance. So I'm having a terrible day. Oh, don't worry about it, Steve. You'll be fine. Oh, great. That's a game. So some of these games are fine, and others are not. Others don't lead to very good outcomes. So, yeah, that's another interesting one. But yeah, we do train each other. I mean, even our pets train us. I don't know whether you've noticed that. I have a dog,
Hmm. Hmm.
and she's definitely got me trained. I know when she needs to go out. I know when she's hungry. All she needs to do is kind of look at me in a certain way, and I know that she wants to play. And she's kind of created a whole set of triggers that get me to do what she needs. So
Hmm.
we all learn. This is learned behaviour. So we all learn
Hmm.
based on what's in front of us. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
We have taught our team how to treat us.
This is true. So
Mm.
what do you think are some things you found? Because obviously you've taught a lot of leadership classes, but how do you help somebody or even help yourself in your mind to get rid of that nice guy syndrome and
Yeah.
move into being an effective leader?
Well, first of all, thanks for asking me that question, Jared. Because I was going to say, never mind your books. A
Yeah.
really good way to learn this stuff is to go onto my website, and you can get one of my courses. So,
Ah.
I train this stuff on the course. You can take part in it. So, yeah, the link is on the show notes underneath directly. So, yeah, why not? Yeah,
Hmm.
the courses are really great value and as cheap as a book, but you get like hours, about 20 hours of courses. So
Good content.
that's my little ad. I've got to
Yeah.
do it. But the real answer to your question is, I think, so I have a little acronym that I won't go through right now, but called a disco. And that acronym helps me to remember the things I need to be doing in order to be more assertive and to actually be the sort of manager that I want to be. Um, One of those things is adult to adult interactions. So that relates to what we've been talking about. But I would also say that I think a really important thing I've mentioned already is this clarity about expectations. Um, we can call them goals if we like, but there's also some clarity there about what you can expect from me and what I expect from you. And sometimes these are things that we need to bring out into the open and discuss openly. So um, I've worked in various different industries where it's okay to go up to a really senior manager and say, I've just noticed you're about to walk into that area there, which is actually not a safe area. You probably
Mm-hmm.
didn't notice the sign there that says you're not allowed to walk in there. You need to walk around the walkway. Or I've just noticed you haven't got your hard hat with you. Can I go and get one for you? Or this is where you need to get them from. And you can do that to anybody. Now, the only way that works is if everybody knows that that's the sort of conversation that can happen in this place. So in some
Mm-hmm.
respects, it's cultural.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, it's about being clear about what you need and what you want as an individual and communicating that and making sure that people understand that that's the way we do things around here.
Mm-hmm.
And then you don't have to wait until you're boiling mad
Mm-hmm.
before you actually say something. I think a lot of us tend to be um, like the volcano. We sort of
Yeah.
we can feel it all bubbling up inside. We've asked this person to do this thing regularly. They've not done it. We've let it go because we're a nice person. We've let it go again because we're a nice person. We've let it go again because we're a nice person. And eventually we just go nuclear. And that's
Mm-hmm.
when we lose control, which is
Mm-hmm.
often the reason for aggressive behavior. So for me, um, being clear about what we need and what we want, being clear about what the standards are, understanding everybody understands the goals and the way we do things around here. I think that's for me. That's how to get the balance right.
Yeah. No, those are great points. It's that makes me think about the pendulum could also swing where you have that blow up, that volcano, and everybody goes because it gets overemphasized or exacerbated because you're
Yeah,
known as this nice guy, and then all of a sudden, boom, where did that come from?
yeah.
And because of the fact that we didn't address it when it needed to be
Yeah, I
addressed.
mean, sometimes that can be very, very powerful, and it
Mhm.
shakes people out
Yeah,
of their
like,
lethargy.
oh,
Like,
he really doesn't
oh my
like
God,
this.
what's happened there? This is really
Yeah.
hit. But
Yeah.
it's quite a short term strategy. Actually, it doesn't last very long because you've either got to keep that up, and then that doesn't really have much impact anymore because now you've become this ogre, or it just gradually people forget that, and it just becomes back to the normal again until you blow up again. I think it's much better to address things as they happen. And the other thing
Sure.
I would say is to try and take the emotion out of it. So rather
Mhm.
than it be an emotional conversation or an emotional decision, it's like, okay, what's the best thing to do? What do I want as an outcome? What
Mhm.
are the best things? What are the things now that need to come out of my mouth or at my keystrokes that's going to
Mhm.
get me more of that thing that I want?
Mhm.
And yeah, sure, that can be a difficult decision sometimes. It can be about giving somebody some uh, feedback that might be considered negative. It could even be saying to somebody that you're not right for this role. And but we do that in a way that is respectful,
Mhm.
taking the emotion out, and just thinking about what it is that we need and want for that particular goal.
Yep. Yep. You can be assertive and yet maintain your integrity and kindness. And
I think that is it's almost part of the definition of it, really.
mhm.
So it's assertiveness for me is about um, gaining respect and getting more of what you want, but doing so in a way that maintains a good working relationship with your team. So that LMX thing, that leader member exchange thing, is still good.
Mhm.
They respect you. They respect that you have requirements of them. They see that you are doing your best to deliver on those goals, um, but you do it in a way that shows respect for them as well. So I think it is possible to do it. I'm quite open about the fact that I used to be quite bad at this, and I went to a course. This is going back sort of 20 years,
Mhm.
um, perhaps 18 years, something like that, but a long time ago. And I learned how to change my behavior because I was that guy that was don't say anything, don't say anything, don't say
Mhm.
anything, go nuclear, and
Yeah.
it was getting in my way, quite frankly. So when I learned this other way of doing things, it really, really helped me.
Mm. No, definitely good to hear. Well, I think that at the end of the day, we have to pick one little thing maybe and say, you know what, I'm going to work on this.
Yeah,
because obviously we'll get ourselves into we'll be stuck if we try to fix it all. And
And
you
the
know,
other thing, Jared, I would say as well is don't be afraid to discuss this with your team members. So I do think one-to-ones are great, and they shouldn't just be about me as the manager telling you what I think about you. It's also a conversation,
mhm,
and there'll be times when you'll maybe have some issues that have cropped up over the last month or two, and you'll say, look, this is an example of something that I'm trying to get better at getting the outcome or getting a better outcome. Um, Remember last month when I asked you to do this thing and so and so. So what do you think? What do you think is the best way to handle this situation?
mhm,
Or maybe you've done some training. So when people come on my courses, I tell them to share with their team members what they've done. There's no
mhm,
secret here. It's not
mhm.
something that only the leadership needs to know.
Yeah,
Share with them assertive behavior, what
sure.
that means.
Yeah.
Then everybody can understand what's going on.
So slide them a survey. Everybody in your department say on a scale of 1 to 10, how nice do you think I am?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes we have a wrong. We think we're doing good, and we need to just
Mm.
be. There's a way of being assertive. You have to get feedback. You got to have that constant feel of the road that you're traveling on in order to get there safely, and we have to have that with the people we lead, and also those that lead us, giving that constant feedback.
Yeah, and I think it's important to take that feedback with the right spirit. So,
Mhm.
firstly, it doesn't mean that every time. So, if anybody's ever done a 360-degree appraisal where you get your manager and your team members and your colleagues and everybody to give you some feedback, sometimes you'll find results of that are a bit prickly. They're not exactly what you'd hoped for. But I
Mhm.
think it's important you don't necessarily have to agree with it. But on the other hand, you're not going to dismiss it out of hand. So take it on board. Okay, I'm going to think about that. Is that something I need to change? Is that something I want to change? If the answer is yes, okay, let's think about how I do it.
Mhm.
But it's not always just because somebody doesn't like what you do doesn't always mean you're wrong. So again, you have to weigh that up. I think the other thing as well is not to beat yourself up too much.
Mhm.
Um, so Jared, you said sometimes you're too nice, or you worry about whether you're too
Oh,
nice.
yeah. Don't beat myself up right
Don't beat yourself up,
now.
mate.
Don't be
Yeah,
Hey,
so
that's
we
good.
none of us get it right all the time, and I
That's right.
certainly don't.
Yeah.
So it's right to learn from these things and to sort of analyze these conversations, but not to overdo it. We're never going to get it right every time. And what does right mean anyway?
Mhm.
It's a movable sort of
Sure.
target.
Yeah, and you can get different opinions from every one person says, "Man, you're a
Yeah,
jerk," and the other person's like, "You're such a nice guy," and you're
too
like, "Well, I'm
nice.
doing the
Yeah,
same thing." So
exactly.
you got so many different things. Hopefully, for those listening, you got some ideas, right, that can help you to say, "Where could I improve?" or "Hey, I'm doing a good job here," because
Yeah,
we all have great things we do as leaders, and focus on the positive.
absolutely, absolutely. Are
I'm
we? Are
exhausted.
we?
I'm all out. I've
We're
ran out of
exhausted, aren't we?
words. I've
Yeah,
exhausted
I
the
think I have. I mean,
yeah.
I could get more into the detail of the research, but I think that's enough. Personally, I think we're there.
We're there.
So,
Yeah,
can you be too nice? Yes, I think you can be too nice.
sure.
Um, but for me, and this is just me trying to sum up. I mean, you can
Mhm.
do your own summing up, but for me, I think we've established that um, too nice means actually allowing people to walk all over you and not getting the outcomes that you need because you're
Mhm.
unwilling to stand up for what you believe.
Yeah,
So I think you can be like that, and I would describe that as passive management behaviour or passive leadership behaviour. I
yeah,
think the way to change that is to be more assertive. That doesn't mean aggressive. It just means being clear about what you need and what you want, and communicating that clearly, sharing goals, and talking to people as adults. So that would be my sort of summary of it.
that's good summary. I think ultimately being nice as a leader has numerous advantages, but I think it's also essential to strike a balance between when to be assertive, and then when you got to make the tough decisions, ultimately looking at the greater good of the team and the individuals that you lead. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And just one other word to throw in there, perhaps we talk about this another time, but
yeah,
we don't want to lose empathy. So maybe
yes,
being nice includes empathy, and empathy is really important for a manager, I do believe.
I can't wait to use that as a discussion. I
But we
love
need to
empathy.
talk
Good
about
one.
that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, cool. Right. Well, Merry Christmas again, and
Merry Christmas to you.
by the time this comes out, of course, it will be well past Christmas, so our listeners will be well into the new year then. So that's the downside of
We can complain
recording.
about what we did or didn't get that we thought we were going to get, and
That's
then
right.
take
Yeah,
that as a pod. No.
yeah. We'll bring our favourite gift in with us next week.
There we go. There we go.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thanks, Jared.
Thank you.